So in this class, we are going to discuss about semiconductors. So in the previous classes, we have discussed about band theory of solids, where the solids have been classified into three types, such as conductors, insulators, and semiconductors. Today, our topic of discussion is semiconductors. So which have properties between conductors as well as insulators. So the solids having conductivity, so less than the conductors and greater than the insulators are called semiconductors. So these have the electrical conduction properties, so that are greater than the insulators, whereas less than the conductors. So if we consider the range of conductivities of semiconductors, these have the conductivity range, so from 10 power minus 4 to 10 power 4 Siemens per centimeter. And these semiconductors are employed everywhere in the electronics industry. So because these are helpful in the manufacture of various kinds of electronic devices, such as diodes, transistors, and integrated circuits. So after the invention of diodes and transistors, so the integrated circuits can be designed, so with the help of these diodes and transistors. So integration in the sense, we are going to keep many electronic devices in the in the small amount of space. So for such kind of integrated circuits, so semiconductors are basic materials. So all these diodes and transistors are designed with the help of semiconductors. So why? Because these have many useful properties such as compactness, reliability, power efficiency, and low cost. So these can be packed heavily in the small amount of area. So that is nothing but compactness. So in the small area, so we can put thousands of electronic devices that are made by using semiconductors. And these are handled very easily, and they can handle high amounts of voltage and currents. So and these are available at low cost. So because silicon, mostly the example of semiconductors are nothing but germanium and silicon. So out of these two, silicon is used heavily because of its low cost, and it is available freely in the nature. And based on the whether we have added impurities or not, so we have two types of semiconductors. So those are pure or intrinsic semiconductors, and another one is impure or extrinsic semiconductors. So first let us discuss what is intrinsic semiconductor. So a semiconductor which doesn't have any kind of impurities. Impurities are in the sense materials other than the original semiconductors. So and behave as insulator at 0 Kelvin and behaves as conductor at higher temperature. So is generally known as intrinsic semiconductor. So simply to say, intrinsic semiconductors are nothing but pure form of semiconductors which do not have any kind of extra materials in them. So the examples of intrinsic semiconductors are germanium and silicon. If you look at the structure of these atoms, mostly all these intrinsic semiconductors are belong to fourth group. That means they have 4 valence electrons in their orbitals. So here each atom of the silicon forms one covalent bond with the other atoms, that means with the neighboring atoms. So each and every silicon atom has 4 valence electrons in it, in the outer shells. So each of these silicon atoms will form 4 covalent bonds with the other atoms present inside the pure semiconductors. And here, since it is difficult to break such bonds at 0 Kelvin temperature, so there are no availability of free electrons. So that is why at 0 Kelvin temperature, so the silicon acts as an insulator. So whereas whenever energy is supplied in the form of heat or whenever this Q semiconductor is connected to high voltage, that means whenever we keep this in electric field, so then there is a chance of breaking of covalent bonds. So and all these electrons are liberated from the covalent bonds and are free to move from valence band to conduction band. So and hence whenever the temperature increases or whenever external electric field is applied, so then it will behave as a conductor. So that means due to the availability of conduction electrons in the conduction band, so it behaves as a conductor. So now if you look at the Fermi energy distribution, since at 0 Kelvin, so mostly according to Fermi Dirac distributions, what do we know? So we have a reference level known as Fermi level. Below that we have valence band, so which consists of electrons generally, because at 0 Kelvin, so our valence band is completely filled with electrons. And the upper band, which is nothing but conduction band, so is completely empty. So now whenever temperature is raised, so then the electrons present in the valence band acquires the energy and they get excited and they jump from valence band to conduction band. So that is why, so we have conductional electrons available in the conduction band, so which are responsible for the conduction of electricity. So these electrons which are excited from valence band to conduction band, so will not stay there for longer time. So they will come back to the valence band again to fill up the gaps. So that's nothing but the vacant sites that are left by the electrons, valence electrons. So generally these vacant signs are known as holes. So to fill these electrons, to fill these gaps, the electrons that are present in the conduction band once again come back to the valence band. So this process is continued whenever we supply the energy to the semiconductors. So now if you look at the energy distribution in case of intrinsic semiconductor, so this process of excitation and de-excitation of electrons will happen mostly at the topmost energy level in the valence band. Similarly, at the bottommost level of the conduction band. So that means the electrons present at the highest, topmost level of the valence band, so will get the energy and they jump to the conduction band. So mostly the lower levels of conduction band are occupied by the excitation electrons. So and hence again these will come back after de-excitation to the valence band. So this kind of process will be continued. So in case of this intrinsic semiconductor, so whenever the electron leaves valence band, so there is a formation of hole. That means, so the number of electron and hole pairs are same in case of intrinsic semiconductor. So that is why the energy level, which is nothing but the Fermi energy level, so mostly lies at the center of the energy gap available in Q semiconductor. So we know that energy gap is nothing but the gap between valence band and conduction band. So but generally this gap is defined as the difference of lowest energy level present in the conduction band and highest energy level present in the valence band. So due to the distribution of these conduction electrons, mostly at the bottom of the conduction band, so we have the Fermi energy lies exactly at the center of energy gap. So EF is generally given as Eg by 2. Next, coming to the extrinsic semiconductors. So the electrical properties of these semiconductors can be modified, so with the help of impurities. So these impurities are helpful in increasing the conduction properties of the pure semiconductors, because we know that in intrinsic semiconductors the number of electrons present in the conduction band will be equal to the number of holes present in the valence band. So that is why there is very less amount of electricity. That means very less amount of current can be passed through the intrinsic semiconductors. That is why it is necessary to modify the properties of these pure semiconductors so that they can encourage more amount of electricity to pass through. So that is why we are going to add some impurities, so are dopants, so which alter the electrical behavior of semiconductors. So these extrinsic semiconductors are obtained by adding very small impurities to pure semiconductors in a controlled manner. So we are not going to add much amount of impurities, only in a controlled manner. However, they are helpful for us. So in that range only we are going to add impurities. So this process of adding impurities to pure semiconductors is known as doping, and the impurity which is added to the pure semiconductor is known as dopant. So that is why these extrinsic semiconductors are also called doped semiconductors. So these possess high electrical conductivity. That means these allow more amount of electricity than the pure or intrinsic semiconductors. And usually these impurities can belong to either third group or fifth group elements. So here the third group elements act like acceptors, whereas the fifth group elements act like donors to the extrinsic semiconductors. So based on the impurities we are going to add to the pure semiconductors. So the extrinsic semiconductors are classified into two categories. They are N-type semiconductors and P-type semiconductors. So coming to the N-type semiconductors, so an N-type semiconductor is created when pure semiconductors such as silicon or germanium are doped with the pentavalent elements like arsenic, antimony, phosphorus, etc. So pentavalent means these have 5 valence electrons in their outermost orbitals. So whenever these kind of pentavalent elements are added to silicon, so it will occupy the place inside the pure semiconductor. Since these have 5 electrons, so each of 4 electrons will form covalent bonds with the neighboring silicon atoms, so which is shown in the figure. So whereas 1 electron is extra, which is present in the phosphorus here, so that is bound to very freely to the parent atom, which is nothing but phosphorus. So this extra electron, so which is shown like free electron, so can be moved within the lattice freely. So that means whenever we are going to add pentavalent atoms in controlled manner, so these are going to donate more number of electrons to the extrinsic N-type semiconductor. So due to availability of more number of electrons, so the concentration of electrons will be greater than the concentration of holes in an N-type semiconductors. So that is why electrons are known as majority carriers in N-type semiconductor, whereas holes are known as minority carriers in N-type semiconductor. That means in N-type semiconductor, the conduction is possible due to electrons, which are nothing but the majority carriers. So next coming to the P-type semiconductor. So this is obtained by adding trivalent elements, so like indium, boron, aluminum, etc. to the pure semiconductors such as silicon or germanium. So if you look at the figure here, so whenever indium is added to silicon, since indium has only 3 valence electrons present in their outermost orbitals, so each of these 3 electrons will form covalent bonds with the neighboring 4 of silicon atoms. So whereas indium requires 1 mole electron to fill its configuration. So that is why the electron present in the another atoms of silicon, so will jump to indium to form the covalent bond, so with the other electron. So since the electrons present in the other atoms are jumped to form 4 covalent bonds with the nearby atoms, so one hole is created in the p-type semiconductors. So due to this kind of process, so whenever trivalent atoms are added, so they are going to accept electrons from the silicon atoms. So due to this result, we have more number of vacant sites present in the p-type semiconductors. These vacant sites are nothing but the holes. So in p-type semiconductors, we have the concentration of holes is more greater than the electrons. So that is why the majority carriers in p-type semiconductors are holes and the minority carriers are electrons. So next, coming to the variation of Fermi energy level in an extrinsic semiconductor. So previously we have seen that the Fermi energy level in intrinsic semiconductor exactly lies at the center of the energy band. But in n-type semiconductor, since we have more number of electrons available, so as they are free to move from valence band to conduction band and available for conduction of electricity, so the average distribution of the energy level, so of donor levels is concentrated just below the conduction band, such that we will have the energy level, so the Fermi energy level EF, so will move towards the bottom of the conduction band, so which is shown here by ED. So whereas coming to the energy distribution, Fermi energy level of p-type semiconductor, since the electrons present in different atoms of silicon are coming towards the trivalent atoms. So here the downward transition takes place and more number of holes are greater than in case of p-type semiconductor. So we will have very less amount of electrons, which are nothing but the minority carriers in p-type semiconductor. So that is why we have acceptor levels that are light just above the valence band. So the Fermi energy level will shift towards the topmost level of the valence band. So the Fermi energy level will lie at the top of the valence band. So in case of p-type semiconductor, so which is shown like acceptor levels here in case of p-type semiconductor. So next, coming to the concept of conductivity in case of semiconductor, intrinsic semiconductor. That means how the conduction is going to vary whenever the intrinsic semiconductor is subjected to external electric field. So conductivity will take place in an intrinsic semiconductor. So due to the movement of electrons and holes under the application of electric field. So whenever this intrinsic semiconductor is connected to external electric field, the electrons will move opposite to the direction of applied electric field and holes will move in the same direction of the applied electric field. So due to this, the average velocity is acquired by the charge carriers, so in the presence of electric field. So this average velocity is generally known as drift velocity, Vd, and its expression is given as, it is directly proportional to the applied electric field. So Vd is directly proportional to Ve, or else Vd equal to mu E. So here mu is nothing but the mobility of the charge carriers, means how they are moving when they are subjected to external electric field. So here this mobility of charge carriers is generally defined as the velocity acquired by the charge carrier per unit applied electric field. So mu equal to Vd by E. So now in case of intrinsic semiconductor, the total current is the sum of the current due to electrons as well as the current due to holes. So I equal to In plus Ip. So In is the net current due to movement of electrons So as well as IP is the net current due to movement of holes. So if A is the area of cross section, so N is the number of electrons per unit volume, and E is the magnitude of charge of an electron. Then flow of electron per second in the conduction band, so is given by the electron current, so In. So we are going to obtain the expressions for In as well as IP. So here In is the net current of due to the movement of electrons that are available in conduction band. So this current is equal to NeAVdN. So where is N is the number of electrons available for unit volume in the conduction band. So and E is the charge of electron and A is the unit surface area and VdN is the drift velocity due to electrons. So on current density of these electrons is generally given by the formula Jn equal to In by A. So Jn equal to NeVdN. So this value according to the expression of drift velocity, so we know that Vd equal to mu E. So that is why if you substitute that expression here, so Jn current density due to electrons equal to Ne mu n into E. So here mu n is the mobility of electrons. And according to the Ohm's law, so we know that the relation between current density and conductivity is generally given by the expression Jn equal to sigma n into E. So here sigma n is the conductivity of electrons. So since we have two expressions available for current density, so we are going to compare these two. So Ne mu n E equal to sigma n into E. So sigma n equal to Ne mu n. So this is the conductivity of electrons. Similarly, we are going to obtain the expression for holes which are present in the valence band. So sigma P equal to P E mu P. So here sigma P is the conductivity due to holes. So P is the number of holes available in valence band and E is the charge of hole and mu P is the mobility of holes. So when they are connected to external electric field. So thus the total conductivity is the sum of conductivity due to electrons as well as sum of the conduction due to holes. So sigma equal to sigma n plus sigma p. So sigma equal to Ne mu n plus p E mu p. So take E common. So n mu n plus p mu p. So this is the general expression for conductivity of semiconductor. So if it is intrinsic semiconductor, so in case of intrinsic semiconductor, we know that the number of electrons available in conduction band is equal to number of holes that are available in valence band and it is equal to the intrinsic carrier concentration. So if you substitute this expression, so then we are going to obtain for intrinsic semiconductor, the conductivity is equal to sigma equal to E Ni mu n plus mu p. For an extrinsic semiconductor, so we have majority carriers are electrons, so whereas minority charge carriers are holes. So for P-type semiconductors, so we will have majority charge carriers are as holes and minority charge carriers as electrons. But the conductivity expression is going to be like this. Sigma equal to E into N mu N plus P into mu P. So next coming to direct and indirect band gap semiconductors. So based on the band gap available between the conduction band and valence band, so we have two types of semiconductors. So those are nothing but direct and indirect band gap semiconductors. So generally this band gap represents as the minimum energy difference between the top of valence band and the bottom of conduction band. So where generally the excitation and de-excitation of electrons take place. So whenever we have minimum energy state in the conduction band CB minima and maximum energy state in the valence band VV maxima are each characterized by certain crystal momentum. Okay, so our propagation vector K. So according to Brilliant-Jones, we have different limits for propagation vector. So where the energy of the electron is allowed. Okay, so that means we have allowed energy levels and forbidden energy levels as per the Brilliant-Jones theory. So now, in case of semiconductor physics, so based on the band gap of semiconductors, we have direct band gap semiconductor and indirect band gap semiconductor. So coming to the direct band gap semiconductors, so these vectors, these propagation vectors, k vectors are same for conduction band minima and as well as valence band maxima. So that means the bottom of conduction band energy levels and the top of the valence band conduction levels are the same. So then it is known as direct band gap semiconductors. So this you can see in this diagram. So these are the k vectors for conduction band. So at the top and valence band at the bottom. So whenever these propagation vectors are same, then it is known as direct band gap semiconductors. So in case of direct band gap semiconductors, the momentum of electrons present in the conduction band is equal to the momentum of holes present in the valence band. So as shown in the right side figure. So in such case, the electrons that are present in the conduction band will recombine directly with the holes present in the valence band. So and they are able to emit photons. So by the process known as spontaneous emission. That means, so in case of direct band gap semiconductors, we can see the production of light. So that is why these transitions from conduction band to valence band are generally known as radiative transitions. So the examples for direct band gap semiconductors are gallium arsenide, indium arsenide, and etc. So next coming to the indirect band gap semiconductors. So if these propagation vector constants, okay, so are different for conduction band minima and valence band maxima, so then those are known as indirect band gap semiconductors. So here if you look at the first diagram, so these are the propagation vectors for valence band and conduction band. So these values are different. And if you look at the momentum of electrons present in the conduction band and momentum of the holes present in the valence band, so these are also not same. So that is why, so whenever the electrons which are present in the conduction band trying to reach the valence band, so they have to hand over its energy to the crystal lattice in order to fall to the valence band. So that is why these radiations are non-radiative transitions. So there is no chance of production of light in case of indirect band gap semiconductors. So the energy released due to non-radiation transition is generally in the form of heat energy. So the examples for indirect band gap semiconductors are silicon and germanium. So next we have Hall effect, so which is applicable for conductors as well as semiconductors. So but here we are going to discuss about how Hall effect is helpful for semiconductors. So Hall effect means whenever a magnetic field is applied perpendicular to the current carrying conductor or semiconductor, so voltage is developed across the specimen in a direction perpendicular to both current and the magnetic field. So this process is nothing but Hall effect, and the developed voltage is generally known as Hall voltage. So whenever we have a current carrying conductor, so if you are going to place it inside magnetic field, so which is perpendicular to the current that is flowing through the semiconductor, in that case, so due to the applied magnetic field which is perpendicular to the current, so there is a chance of developing Hall voltage, so on the two opposite faces of the semiconductors. So this will happen due to the Lorentz force that is created by the magnetic field. So this Hall effect is useful for us to identify the nature of charge carriers present in a material. That means whether it is N type of semiconductor or P type of semiconductor. So we can classify this N type or P type semiconductor with the help of Hall effect. So that means in the case of N type semiconductor, the Hall coefficient we are going to obtain is negative, whereas in case of P type semiconductor, we are going to obtain positive value for Hall coefficient. And once we are able to differentiate N type and P type semiconductors, so we are able to find out what are the majority carriers present in it. So if it is N type semiconductor, majority carriers are electrons. So if it is P type semiconductors, the majority charge carriers are holes. So this is also helpful for finding out the mobility of these charge carriers also. So if you look at these figures, so this is the effect of Hall effect in case of semiconductors for P type as well as N type semiconductors. So whenever P type semiconductor is kept inside magnetic field, so whenever the current is passing through it, so along the direction of X shown in the figure, so if the applied magnetic field is in the perpendicular direction, so which is along at the Y direction, so now we are going to obtain the Hall field or Hall voltage, so in the Z direction. So whenever, since we have P type semiconductors, if it is P type semiconductor, the majority charge carriers are holes. So whenever these experience Lorentz force, so these are going to transfer from top of the surface to the bottom of the surface due to Lorentz field that are acquired by the holes. So due to this, all the positive charge carriers that are nothing but holes, so will be deposited on the opposite face. So due to this, we are going to obtain the Hall voltage, so which is nothing but the positive value. So plus and minus are along the positive direction of the Z axis. So whereas if it is N type semiconductor, so these electrons will experience Lorentz force, so which is created by the applied magnetic field, so that is present in the direction of y-axis. So now all the electrons that are present at the top of the semiconductor are going to travel in the opposite direction of the current. So and they will deposit on the bottom surface of the N-type semiconductor. That means here, so we are going to obtain the Hall voltage in the negative direction of Z-axis. So this accumulation of charges will continue till the Hall voltage, so will oppose the Lorentz force that are created due to application of magnetic field. So whenever these two forces are balanced, then the accumulation of these charges will be stopped. So based on the accumulation of these charges, so we are going to obtain the Hall coefficient value, so by connecting the probes. So whenever we obtain the positive value of Hall coefficient, then we can determine it as P-type semiconductor. So whenever it is negative, then we are able to distinguish it as N-type semiconductor. So this is about Hall effect.